My name is Victoria Hale, and for years I believed that treating people with kindness would always be repaid with respect. As the CEO of one of the largest investment firms in the city, I had learned to stay calm under pressure, solve impossible problems, and ignore petty inconveniences. That was exactly why I never complained when my driver, Ethan Brooks, started bringing his girlfriend to work every morning. Her office happened to be on the same route as mine, so I considered it a harmless favor. I had no reason to interfere with someone else's personal life. Looking back now, I realize that silence often encourages people to cross lines they never would have dared approach otherwise. Everything changed on a cold Monday morning. I opened the rear door of my black Maybach, expecting another ordinary ride to the office, but instead my eyes landed on a handwritten note taped across my usual seat. Freeloaders are not welcome in this car. I stared at the paper for several seconds before slowly peeling it away. Confused, I turned toward Ethan, who had suddenly become unusually nervous. Before he could explain, the woman sitting proudly in the passenger seat twisted around and glared at me with complete disgust. "Can you read?" she snapped. "Every day you shamelessly ride around with my boyfriend. If you can't pay for a taxi, maybe you should stay home instead of living off someone else's generosity." For a moment I honestly wondered if I had misunderstood her. Then Ethan hurried closer and lowered his voice. "Ms. Hale, please don't be angry. My girlfriend doesn't know I'm a chauffeur. She's extremely jealous, so I told her I manage a successful company. The note was only because she worries about me. Besides..." He hesitated before adding, "She isn't comfortable sitting in the same car with you. Let me take her to work first. I'll come back for you afterward." Before I could answer, he climbed into my own vehicle, started the engine, and drove away with his girlfriend laughing beside him, leaving me standing alone on the sidewalk. I watched my Maybach disappear around the corner, then calmly pulled out my phone. "Hello," I said when emergency dispatch answered. "I'd like to report a stolen vehicle. A man has just driven away in my car without permission." Even while speaking those words, I could hardly believe they were true. I had negotiated billion-dollar contracts, survived corporate takeovers, and dealt with ruthless competitors. Yet somehow the most ridiculous situation of my career involved my own employee stealing my own luxury car while believing I would simply wait for him to return. About 20 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. They had barely stepped out of their cruiser when my Maybach rushed back into view. Ethan jumped out before the engine had fully stopped, his face drained of color. "Ms. Hale," he shouted. "Why would you call the police?" One of the officers looked between us. "Ma'am, is this the man you reported?" Ethan immediately raised both hands. "Officer, this is all a misunderstanding. I'm her driver. I simply dropped someone off before bringing the vehicle back. Nothing was stolen." The officer turned toward me. "Would you like to press charges?" Before I answered, Ethan leaned close enough that only I could hear him. "Please, think about my father. He drove for you faithfully for years. He's sick now. I finally found someone I love, and I only lied because I didn't want to lose her. Please don't ruin everything." Mentioning his father gave me pause. His father, Daniel Brooks, had driven me for nearly 6 years without a single complaint. He was always punctual, respectful, and honest. When illness forced him into early retirement, he had asked only one favor, that I give his unemployed son an opportunity. Out of gratitude for Daniel's loyalty, I had agreed. Looking at Ethan now, trembling in front of the police, I let out a quiet sigh. "Forget it," I told the officers. "I won't press charges." Relief flooded his face so quickly it almost seemed rehearsed. He thanked me repeatedly, apologized again, and promised nothing like this would ever happen another time. I accepted the apology because I wanted to believe his father's integrity had simply skipped one difficult moment. Unfortunately, I would soon discover that the note on my seat had only been the beginning of a much larger deception. Over the following weeks, Ethan stopped bringing his girlfriend during my morning commute, and the car remained spotless. On the surface everything appeared normal again. Yet something else changed. He began arriving late almost every day, always carrying a different excuse. One morning there had supposedly been a terrible traffic accident. The next day his alarm had mysteriously failed. Another morning he claimed a pipe had burst inside his apartment and flooded the neighbors below. Every explanation sounded less believable than the last, but because he continued driving carefully and behaved respectfully, I chose not to argue. I had multi-million-dollar negotiations occupying my attention every hour of every day. I wasn't interested in wasting energy investigating excuses from a chauffeur. I convinced myself the unpleasant incident had been resolved. I couldn't have been more wrong. I was only seeing the first act of a performance that was about to destroy far more than my patience. A few weeks later I decided to spend a quiet weekend at my countryside estate outside Ashford. I rarely visited the property because work consumed nearly every waking hour, but that Saturday I desperately needed peace. I called Ethan and asked him to pick me up. Instead of his usual quick response, he hesitated for several seconds before answering. "Ms. Hale. I'm really sorry. One of the tires went flat this morning. The car is at the repair shop, and the mechanic says it won't be finished until tomorrow. If you'd like, I can arrange another driver for you." Something about his tone sounded forced, but I was too tired to question it. "Never mind," I replied. "I'll take a taxi." Nearly an hour later my cab turned onto the private road leading to my villa. The moment I reached the front gate, I froze. My black Maybach was parked directly outside the entrance, perfectly clean and obviously undamaged. There was no flat tire. There had never been one. My pulse quickened as I stepped out of the taxi and walked toward the house. The front door wasn't locked. I pushed it open and immediately felt every muscle in my body tighten. The elegant living room I had carefully designed looked as if a reckless party had exploded inside it. Empty liquor bottles covered the tables. Cigarette butts littered the marble floor. Fruit peels, greasy food containers, and sunflower seed shells were scattered everywhere. Muddy footprints stained the expensive carpet, while several cigarette burns had permanently damaged the imported leather sofa that had cost more than most people earned in a year. Then I noticed the crowd occupying my home as if it belonged to them. Nearly a dozen strangers lounged across my furniture, laughing loudly with drinks in their hands. At the center of them all sat Ethan's girlfriend, Vanessa, dressed like royalty while everyone around her showered her with compliments. "You're so lucky," one woman laughed. "Your boyfriend owns a luxury company, drives a Maybach, and even bought this incredible villa. Don't forget us once you become the boss's wife." Vanessa smiled proudly until she noticed me standing in the doorway. Her expression instantly hardened. She stood, walked straight toward me, and before I could speak, her hand crashed across my face. The slap echoed through the room. My cheek burned with pain. "You shameless woman," she shouted. "You actually followed my boyfriend here?" The room fell silent. Every pair of eyes focused on me. Vanessa pointed directly at my face. "This is the pathetic woman I told you all about. She clings to my boyfriend every day, begging for rides in his car. Apparently that wasn't enough. Now she's trying to sneak into his house." I stared at her in disbelief. "Who told you this villa belongs to Ethan?" She laughed as if I had asked the most ridiculous question imaginable. "He did. He's the CEO of his company. You're just one of his employees. He told me you keep inventing excuses to spend time alone with him because you're desperate to climb the social ladder." Suddenly everything made sense. Ethan hadn't merely hidden his real job. He had invented an entirely different life. To Vanessa, he was a wealthy executive, the owner of the luxury car, the villa, and the successful corporation. In her version of reality, I was nothing more than an ambitious employee trying to seduce her successful boyfriend. No wonder she had treated me with such open contempt every morning. She honestly believed she was defending her relationship. Vanessa turned dramatically toward her friends. "You know what's even more pathetic," she announced. "I even left her a warning note in the car telling her to stop using my boyfriend, and she became so obsessed she called the police to harass him. Poor Ethan has been driving me around first every morning before going back to pick her up just so she won't create more problems at work." My stomach tightened. So that was the reason he had been arriving late every day. Instead of driving directly to me, he had secretly been chauffeuring Vanessa around town in my own car before returning as though nothing had happened. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. The lies had become so elaborate that even he probably struggled to remember them all. Keeping my voice calm, I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I ignored Vanessa completely and dialed my company's legal department. "Bring a full legal team and security to my Ashford estate immediately," I said. "I also need documentation specialists and property investigators." Before I could finish the call, Vanessa lunged forward, ripped the phone from my hand, and smashed it against the marble floor. The screen shattered instantly. She smiled with satisfaction before her attention shifted to the jade pendant hanging around my neck. Her eyes narrowed with greed. "That's beautiful," she said. "Some rich old boyfriend buy it for you?" Before I could step back, she grabbed the necklace and tore it from my neck so violently that the chain snapped against my skin. A sharp sting spread across my throat. Panic unlike anything I had ever experienced rushed through me. "Give it back," I said, my voice trembling. "Please, just give it back." My desperation only amused her. She dangled the pendant between two fingers while her friends laughed. "So it actually is valuable," she said. "No," I answered immediately. "It isn't valuable because of money. It belonged to my mother. Please, give it back." That necklace had accompanied me almost every day of my life. When I was 4 years old, doctors believed I wouldn't survive a severe illness. My mother refused to accept their verdict. She climbed an ancient mountain temple on her knees, praying for my life with every painful step until she finally received the jade charm from the monks. Against every expectation, I recovered. She never truly regained her own strength, and before she died she placed that pendant into my hands, asking me to protect it forever. It was the last piece of her I still carried with me. Vanessa smiled coldly, raised her arm, and slammed the pendant onto the marble floor with all her strength. The sound of cracking jade echoed through the room. My mother's necklace shattered into dozens of tiny green fragments that scattered across the white stone like broken glass. At that exact moment, something inside me broke with it. For several seconds I simply stared at the shattered jade scattered across the marble floor. My breathing became uneven, and everything around me seemed to disappear beneath the sound of my own heartbeat. My mother's final gift, something she had sacrificed her health to obtain and trusted me to protect until the end of my life, had been destroyed in less than a second by someone who didn't even know what it meant. I slowly knelt down, reaching for the broken fragments with trembling fingers, but before I could touch them, Vanessa deliberately stepped on one of the larger pieces with the heel of her expensive shoe. The sharp crack echoed through the silent room. "Oops," she said with a smirk. "Guess it wasn't as precious as you claimed." Something inside me finally snapped. I rose to my feet and slapped her across the face with every ounce of strength I had. The sound was louder than the one she had made when she hit me. Her head jerked sideways, and for one brief moment the room fell completely silent. Then she screamed. "How dare you touch me?" Her expression twisted into pure hatred as she pointed directly at me. "Teach this pathetic woman a lesson. Whoever leaves the biggest mark on her gets $50,000. Her friends didn't hesitate for even a second. They rushed toward me together. Someone shoved me from behind while another woman grabbed my hair so violently that I nearly lost my balance. Kicks landed against my ribs, my legs, and my back before I could even defend myself. A fist struck my shoulder. Another slammed into my side. I collapsed onto the floor, curling instinctively to protect myself while the blows continued raining down from every direction. I heard laughter above me. Someone was recording everything with a phone while others shouted insults, calling me a liar, a homewrecker, and a desperate gold digger. Vanessa crouched beside me, grabbed a handful of my hair, and forced my face upward. "Where's all that confidence now?" she whispered with cruel satisfaction. "Didn't you say this necklace meant everything to you? Too bad. Maybe next time you'll learn not to chase another woman's man." Blood trickled from the corner of my lip, but I forced myself to look directly into her eyes. "You'll regret this," I said quietly. The room exploded with laughter. "Regret?" Vanessa laughed louder than everyone else. "The only person who's going to regret anything is you." She shoved my head back against the floor and stood triumphantly while her friends continued mocking me. Then, suddenly, another sound filled the house. Engines. Not one engine, but many. Powerful luxury vehicles rolled through the front gates one after another, their tires crunching across the gravel driveway. The laughter inside the villa slowly faded. Even Vanessa released my hair as everyone turned toward the windows. Black SUVs and executive sedans stopped outside in perfect formation. Doors opened almost simultaneously. My head of security, Marcus Reed, entered first, followed by 4 security officers, 2 attorneys from my legal department, several senior executives from my company, and a team of investigators carrying cameras and evidence cases. Marcus immediately spotted me sitting on the floor. His expression remained calm, but I recognized the dangerous silence behind his eyes. He crossed the room in only a few steps before extending his hand toward me. "Ms. Hale," he said respectfully, "can you stand?" I accepted his hand and slowly rose despite the pain shooting through my ribs and wrist. Every bruise reminded me of what had happened only moments earlier, but I refused to show weakness. My legal team immediately spread throughout the villa, photographing every damaged surface, every cigarette burn, every broken bottle, every footprint pressed into the carpet. No one spoke unnecessarily. Their efficiency alone changed the atmosphere inside the room. Vanessa's confident smile disappeared for the first time since I had arrived. Who are these people?" she asked nervously. Nobody answered her. They didn't need to. A few minutes later the front door opened again. Ethan walked inside carrying a paper bag that smelled of freshly roasted chestnuts. His cheerful expression vanished the instant he saw the security team, the lawyers documenting the house, and me standing beside Marcus with bruises already forming across my face. The paper bag slipped from his fingers, spilling its contents across the dirty floor. He looked from me to Vanessa and back again, unable to speak. "Ethan," I said calmly, "tell everyone in this room who owns this villa." He remained frozen. Vanessa rushed toward him. "Tell them," she demanded. "Tell them this is your house. Tell them you're the CEO." He closed his eyes for several long seconds before finally lowering his head. "It isn't my house," he whispered. "It belongs to Ms. Hale." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Vanessa stared at him as though she hadn't understood the words. "What did you say?" "The villa belongs to her," he repeated weakly. "The Maybach is hers. The company is hers. I'm not the CEO. I'm only her driver." I watched the truth spread across every face in the room. Confusion became disbelief. Disbelief became fear. Vanessa looked at me again, but this time the arrogance had completely vanished. She finally understood that the woman she had insulted, slapped, humiliated, and ordered everyone to beat was the actual owner of everything she had been pretending to enjoy for weeks. I took one slow step toward her and spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. "For 6 weeks you occupied my home without permission. You destroyed my property, assaulted me, and shattered the only keepsake my mother left behind. Every second of this ends today." At that moment, the sound of approaching police sirens echoed beyond the front gate. The consequences had finally arrived. The police entered the villa within minutes. By then my legal team had already photographed every room, collected the shattered jade pieces into evidence bags, secured the security camera recordings, and copied the dashcam footage from my Maybach. Every lie, every act of vandalism, and every assault had been preserved before anyone had the opportunity to erase a single detail. Vanessa hurried toward the officers first, desperately trying to regain control of the situation. "Officer, you've got this all wrong," she insisted. "She attacked me first. My boyfriend invited us here. We didn't know." One officer calmly raised a hand to stop her. "We'll hear everyone's statement individually." I remained silent while my chief attorney, Rebecca Morgan, stepped forward and handed the officers a detailed report. "This is Ms. Victoria Hale, Chief Executive Officer of Horizon Capital Group and the legal owner of this property," she explained. She arrived today to discover her private residence had been occupied without authorization for approximately 6 weeks. During that period, extensive property damage occurred, company assets were repeatedly misused, and today she was physically assaulted by multiple individuals. Every incident has been documented through surveillance footage, witness statements, vehicle recordings, and photographs. The officers slowly looked around the devastated living room before asking everyone present for identification. Vanessa's friends, who had been so confident only minutes earlier, suddenly became very quiet. Some avoided eye contact. Others quietly stepped farther away from Vanessa as though hoping distance alone would erase their involvement. It didn't. Every action had already been recorded. While the police interviewed witnesses inside, Ethan found me standing outside near the driveway. His shoulders were slumped, and for the first time since I had hired him, he looked genuinely defeated. "Ms. Hale," he whispered, "please, don't do this. Think about my father. He's still recovering. If he finds out what happened, it'll destroy him." I looked at him for a long moment before answering. "Your father earned my respect through years of honesty. That respect gave you a second chance after you took my car without permission. Instead of appreciating it, you used that opportunity to continue lying, abusing my trust, and allowing someone else to humiliate me with my own property. None of this is your father's responsibility. It's yours." Tears filled his eyes, but I felt no satisfaction. Only disappointment. "You borrowed someone else's life because you thought it looked better than your own," I continued quietly. "But borrowed lives never belong to the people wearing them." He lowered his head, unable to answer. That evening I was taken to the hospital. The doctors confirmed a severely sprained wrist, bruised ribs, multiple contusions, and facial swelling from the attack. While they treated my injuries, I held the small evidence bag containing the broken jade fragments. Looking at those shattered pieces hurt far more than any bruise. My mother had climbed an entire mountain on bleeding knees praying that I would survive childhood. Before she died, she entrusted that pendant to me as a symbol of her love and sacrifice. Nothing could ever replace it. After leaving the hospital, I contacted a master jeweler. I asked him not to rebuild the pendant into something new but to preserve every fragment exactly as it was inside a crystal locket. I wanted the damage to remain visible because pretending it had never happened would only erase the story behind it. A few days later, Daniel Brooks visited me. Illness had made him thinner than I remembered, and he walked slowly with a cane, but the shame on his face weighed far heavier than his sickness. He apologized repeatedly for his son's actions, though none of it had been his fault. I assured him that I would never blame him for Ethan's choices. Honest people should never carry the consequences created by dishonest ones. Before leaving, he quietly said, "Your mother would be proud of the woman you've become." Those words stayed with me long after he walked away. Within 48 hours, my company's communications department released an official statement explaining everything supported by evidence. The story spread across national media almost immediately. News headlines exposed how a chauffeur had pretended to be the CEO of a major corporation while his girlfriend publicly humiliated the real owner. Videos Vanessa had proudly uploaded during those 6 weeks became proof against her. Photos of herself posing inside my villa, sitting inside my Maybach, and boasting about her luxurious lifestyle flooded social media again, this time accompanied by public outrage instead of admiration. She attempted to post a tearful apology, claiming she had been deceived and was another victim of Ethan's lies, but the surveillance footage told a different story. Millions of people watched her slap me, destroy my mother's pendant, and encourage her friends to attack me. No explanation could erase those images. The legal proceedings lasted several months. Ethan accepted responsibility almost immediately because the evidence against him was overwhelming. He lost his job, his professional reputation, and every opportunity to continue working as a chauffeur within our corporate network. Vanessa fought much longer, convinced she could somehow manipulate the truth. She failed. The court ordered her and every participant in the assault to compensate for the extensive property damage, my medical expenses, and the destruction of my mother's irreplaceable heirloom. The financial judgment could never restore what had been lost, but it established something equally important: actions always carry consequences. Several weeks after the trial, the jeweler returned my mother's pendant. The jade remained broken, suspended forever inside clear crystal exactly as it had shattered that afternoon. I fastened it around my neck and touched it gently. It no longer represented something perfect. Instead, it reminded me that love survives even after it has been broken, and that strength often comes from carrying our scars instead of hiding them. I still travel to work every morning in the same Maybach. My new driver arrives on time, drives directly to the office, and never forgets that the car belongs to someone else. Every morning I catch my reflection in the window, my mother's restored pendant resting against my collarbone, and I remember the lesson that cost me so much to learn. Wealth can be borrowed. Status can be faked. Lies can impress people for a while. But integrity is the only thing that cannot be stolen, imitated, or worn like someone else's expensive suit. In the end, truth always arrives, sometimes quietly, sometimes with police sirens, but it always arrives.